After a long week off of uploads, I am officially back, folks. Welcome back, Capital F football fans, to the Ono Sports YouTube channel. Today, we are going over my personal contenders for this upcoming college football season. Who do I think is capable of winning a national championship based on kind of the early research I've been doing into this season? We are going to find out, but first, as always, be sure to like and subscribe if you do enjoy it, and go ahead and drop a comment who you think is capable of winning a national championship this year, and you might as well get your prediction in there. Who is your pick? I am dying to hear what you guys think, so go ahead and drop that comment like I said. And without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Here is the tier list. Now, the tiers are pretty self-explanatory, but for the less academically inclined, let's go ahead and go over it. Contender, these are the teams that I think are absolutely capable of winning a national championship. Dark horse, maybe on the fringe. Maybe if a couple things go right, they could end up getting to that level this year. Not quite are going to be teams that I think are just outside of that realm. Probably even if everything goes right, they might be able to make the playoff, but don't think they're capable of winning at all. Probably not are going to be teams that I have safely sitting outside this range. Probably teams that are going to be bowl eligible, but definitely not towards the top of their conference. Definitely not college football playoff contenders, and no chance, of course, are going to be the teams that I think have absolutely no shot of making the college football playoff. Probably not of making a bowl game or even getting anywhere close to that range. And it could get a little bit spicy. We're going to have to wait and see there. But first, we have none other than the Alabama Crimson Tide. To start us off, FanDuel has Alabama winning the national championship at plus 2,500 odds. Kind of low for how talented they are. I would say they're definitely a contender this year just because of that talent level. Obviously, the start of the Kalen DeBoer era hasn't been quite what Alabama fans were hoping, but I definitely think with that talent level, with DeBoer and his staff having reached a national championship in the past, they are more than capable of winning it all this year. And after them, we have the Arizona Wildcats. Arizona is a team that I'm actually pretty high on coming into this year. I think their roster is pretty good. I think their staff is actually a lot better than I thought going into last season, but I definitely don't think they are capable of winning a national championship. Maybe getting to the CFP, possibly, if a lot of things go right, like I said. I have them in not quite, but could end up finishing in the top 25 by the season's end. And after them, we have Arizona State. I am personally a huge believer in this team. I think they could end up competing for the Big 12 title this year. I love Kenny Dillingham, love that staff. I don't know if I would quite go dark horse though, just because we have seen them in the CFP before. Don't really have the talent level necessarily of winning it all, so I will go right next to Arizona in the not quite range. And then we have Arkansas. A lot of people actually really like the Ryan Silverfield hire. I am not super high on them in general, probably not in the future, definitely not this year. They are going to be our first no chance team. I think they probably finish outside of the bowl eligibility range. And another team like them is the Auburn Tigers, who we have next. They bring in Alex Galesh, formerly of South Florida. I really like that hire. I think offensively they should be very, very good this year. But with all that, I don't think they have a real shot at winning the SEC. I think they could potentially be in that top 25 range, but for the sake of this list, I'm going in the probably not, just because in order for them to get there, they would have to make a huge leap in the SEC, probably finish in the top 3 or 4 teams, which I don't think is really possible. And after them, we have the Baylor Bears, a team who has been very, very up and down the last few seasons. I'm going to safely put them in probably not. I think they have a better shot, a better avenue at getting to the college football playoff just being in the Big 12, but I do not think they win the conference. I think they could end up in bowl eligible range, but I have them very, very safely outside my top 25. Probably not a CFP contender this year. After them, it is the Boston College Eagles. I don't even know if I really need to say anything about them. I'm going no chance for them. I don't like them at all this year. Don't think they really have a shot in the ACC, which is probably going to be a 1-bid league, maybe 2 bids. Don't think Boston College fits either of those spots this year. And after them, we have none other than BYU. I actually really like BYU once again this year. I liken them a lot to Indiana. I think Kalani Sitake has been very, very good at identifying talent, creating that scheme around the talent. I think BYU does a good job at putting their talent in place to really go out and shine. Do I have them once again potentially being a CFP team? Yes. Do I have them being able to win a national championship? No, so I'm going to once again put them in not quite, although I do really like BYU this year. Just like the next team on this list, the California Golden Bears. I really like them in the ACC, but with that, I do not think they win the ACC, which is, like I said, probably a one-bid league. I think they could win 8 or 9 games, but I will safely have them outside of my CFP, outside of my top 25 this year. And after them, you can't see it here. It is the Cincinnati Bearcats. Cincinnati is a team that I think should have been a lot better than they were last year. And with that, they lose a lot of talent. Obviously, Brendan Sorsby makes the leap to Texas Tech. I am not super high on them this year. I'm going to put them in no chance, which might seem a little bit disrespectful just because they have made the CFP before. But personally, I am not a huge believer in Scott Satterfield. Don't think they're really capable of competing in the Big 12, at least for the title. They might finish top half, but I think very, very safely so, they do not end up a CFP team this year. Unlike a Clemson team who is going to be very, very tricky because they have won a national championship in recent memory, but as of late, they really haven't been at that level. I think they have the talent necessary in order to win the ACC, get into the CFP, but can they win the national championship? I would say no, probably not, but just because they have gotten to that level, I'm going to put them at a dark horse. If everything goes right for Clemson, I think they are capable of winning, but I don't think they're on the level of an Alabama where it's actually within the realm of possibility. Looking at the FanDuel numbers, they don't really think so either. They have Clemson winning the national championship at plus 20,000. So while I do think they're a dark horse team, while I do think they can make the CFP, I do not think they're going to win it in 2026. And after them, we have the Colorado Buffaloes, and we've all seen that video circulating. They are a very, very undersized team, or at least look it in the spring. I do not have a ton of faith in that staff. Deion Sanders could very well prove me wrong, but without that superstar talent that they had 2 years ago, haven't really looked amazing so far throughout his coaching tenure. I'm going to go no chance for Colorado. And then after them, we have Duke. Duke, of course, won the ACC last year, which this year would qualify them as a CFP team. Do I think they get back to that without Darian Mensah? I would say probably not. I think they could be in the mix for the ACC title once again, but I do think they take a slight step back, finish more in the realm of these teams here. And after them, we have the Florida Gators. They obviously have not been very good the past few years under Billy Napier, but they bring in my personal favorite hire this year, John Sumrall from Tulane, to take over. They are a very, very talented team. They have been for the entire Billy Napier tenure. And with the staff moves that they made, I actually think they are a potential dark horse team. FanDuel has them at plus 5,000, so better than a team like Clemson. And that's because even without the greatest coaching in the world last year, they were able to compete with some of the top teams in the SEC. I think they are capable of winning a national championship. Do I think they do that this year? Probably not, but could they make the CFP? I think so this year. And after them, we have Florida State. Obviously not been the greatest team in the past few years with Mike Norvell after winning the ACC, just barely missing the CFP, I think 3 seasons ago. I'm going to put them in not quite. Obviously, they have the talent necessary to get there. They just haven't been able to take that step up. I think they could end up in the top 25. Winning the ACC is a possibility just with that talent, like I said, but probably not going to happen this year if I had to bet on it. So I have them just outside the conversation in the not quite tier. And with looking at the teams here, I'm actually going to bump them down to a probably not. I would safely have them outside of CFP contention this year. And after them, it is Georgia. And need I say more? They are absolutely a contender for the national championship this year. They are consistently one of the best teams in the sport. I feel like that goes without saying at this point. So with that, I will move on to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech loses Buster Faulkner, loses its offensive line coach, Jeep Wade, but I still have a ton of faith in Brent Key overall. I think they could be in the mix for the ACC, but with that, I have them safely outside of the CFP. I don't think they end up winning the conference this year. If it were last year, I'd probably have them in this range just because they had a lot of stuff going for them, but have to replace a ton of talent, have to replace a lot of staff, so I'm going to put them in the probably not tier. And following them, I have Houston, who I'm probably going to put in the same tier, maybe a potential top 25 team with all the talent they have returning. And I actually think I will put them there just because the Big 12 is probably going to be a little bit more open this year. I do not think they end up making the CFP, but if things go right, they could end up winning 10 games, being in that conversation. Like I said, they do have a ton of talent returning. They did have a very, very good season last year, but don't think they're quite on the talent level of any of these 4 teams above them. And after them, it is Illinois. Illinois is another team who has to replace a good amount of talent this season. I think Brett Bielema is a very good head coach, but not quite elite. I don't think he's capable of bringing them to the top of that conference, competing for a Big Ten title. So with that, I have them safely outside of the conference title picture, safely outside of the CFP picture in 2026. And after them, it is Iowa. And unlike Illinois, I actually think they could make a little bit of noise in the Big Ten. They've showed they are capable of that under Kirk Ferentz. So I would have them not quite. I think they will finish probably inside the top 25, maybe at 9 or 10 wins. And with a little bit of chaos, I think they could make the CFP, but definitely not counting on that in 2026. I have them safely outside of that picture once again. And moving on, we have the 2025 college football national champions. And I think just because of that, I have to go contender. Curt Cignetti, obviously one of the best coaches in the sport, has one of the best staffs in the sport, is one of the best talent identifiers in the sport. So I'm safely putting them in contender once again. And then after them, we have Iowa State. I do not have a ton of faith in this Cyclones team in 2026. They obviously lose Matt Campbell. They lose a ton of their roster, replace him with a pretty okay coach in Jimmy Rogers, but I don't think in their first rebuilding year with him that they are even capable of competing towards the top of that conference. I would have them maybe being in the bowl eligible range, but safely below where they've been the past few years when they had Matt Campbell. And after them, we have Kansas State, who of course hires Colin Klein, formerly the offensive coordinator at Texas A&M, formerly the quarterback at Kansas State. The prodigal son returns. I am not above and beyond high on them this year. I would be less surprised if they competed towards the top of that conference in a few of these other teams. So I am going to put them in not quite. In year one with Colin Klein, I could see them finishing inside the top 25, probably in the top 7 to 8 teams in the Big 12. I wouldn't argue with you if you said probably not, but for the sake of consistency with all these other Big 12 teams in here, I'm going to put them in not quite. And another Big 12 team is the Kansas Jayhawks, who we have next. I'm going to put them in no chance just because they haven't been an elite team in a very, 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 very long time. I don't think they have the talent level that's capable of winning a national championship, very obviously so. And I don't even think they really should be able to compete in the Big 12 this year. Are they capable of being bowl eligible? Probably. Do I think they get there? Probably not. They do have to replace a lot. And with that, I'm keeping them in no chance. After them, a team who I would probably say had no chance last year is the Kentucky Wildcats. But with Will Stein, with some of the moves they made in the transfer portal, I actually like them a little bit more this year. I will go ahead and say probably not, though, just because, once again, they are in the SEC. It will be a lot harder for a team like Kentucky to get to the top of that conference, which would place them in the CFP picture. Don't think they're quite there yet, but could they get there with Will Stein? I think potentially so, yes. And then after them, their rival, the Louisville Cardinals, I'm going to go in the not quite. I think with Jeff Brom, they are one of the more underrated teams year in and year out. I think they could once again compete towards the top of the ACC, but once again, the CFP picture is going to be a stretch for them. Don't think they quite have that talent level for me to be confident that they can make the CFP. I would not be surprised at all if they did, just because the ACC is going to be more open, like I've said at points throughout this video, but not quite counting on it, so I have them in the not quite tier. Unlike a team in LSU, who of course gets Lane Kiffin this offseason, overhauls that roster, brings in a ton of talent, I'm going to put them in contender. Will I have them winning it this year? No, but with the talent level, with the coaching they have now, I think they definitely could. So once again, do have them in this conversation for contender, unlike a team in Maryland, who I am very, very much so not high on this year. I think this could be the last year Mike Locksley. Didn't really see the point in extending him this year. He has been good at obtaining talent, but not very good at winning games so far at Maryland. So for that, I have him in no chance. Unlike a team in Miami who was just in the national title game, I think with that, with Shannon Dawson returning, with Corey Heatherman returning, I have to put them in contender. They should be able to compete at the top of the ACC once again. Do they end up winning the ACC championship? We shall see. Am I a bit concerned about their offensive and defensive line? Yes, I am, but I still firmly have them in that CFP contention range. I think with the talent level, like I said, with the coaching, they could once again get there. And that is not too dissimilar to a team in Michigan who brings in Kyle Whittingham after the whole Sharon Moore fiasco. And I think that is actually a very, very substantial upgrade. I'm going to put them in the dark horse. I think they could once again compete for the Big Ten title in year one with Whittingham. With the talent they're going to have year in and year out, I think they are more than capable of being in that conference title picture. And with that, of course, being in the CFP talks in 2026. And after them, it is their in-state rival, the Michigan Spartans. I'm going to go no chance for them because I don't think there's a shot in the world that they end up competing in the Big Ten this year. Could they be bowl eligible? Maybe. I will probably end up having them fairly below that, kind of in the same range as a Maryland. But in year one with Pat Fitzgerald, I guess anything is possible. So I won't say that they can't make a bowl game this year, unlike Minnesota, who has been doing that pretty frequently with PJ Fleck. Will they be a CFP team? Will they be competing for the Big Ten? Probably not, so I have them at probably not. And with that, we have the Ole Miss Rebels. They are a curious team this year because, of course, they do lose Lane Kiffin. They lose a good chunk of talent from that roster, but they do bring back Trinidad Chambliss. They bring back Pete Golding as their head coach, who was their head coach throughout their playoff run last year. So with that, the easy take, in my opinion, would be having them probably in dark horse. I don't think they're quite at that level this year. I think they probably take a decent step back and finish probably outside the top 5 in the SEC. So with that, I'm going in the not quite tier. I think they may be in top 25 contention, but don't think they have quite the season they had last year. Definitely have them taking a step back in 2026. And after them, it is their in-state rival, the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and I would probably put them no chance, but seeing as they did pretty decently last year, I could see a probably not. They do bring in Zach Arnett back as their defensive coordinator, who was very, very good at that same position a few years ago. But looking at this tier with some of these other teams, I don't think they're quite on any of these levels. I don't think they're safely a bowl eligible team in 2026. I think they could get there, but will be an uphill battle for the Bulldogs. And I am actually going to go no chance for the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Don't think they are even in consideration for the college football playoff this year. And after them, we have the Missouri Tigers, who have been very, very good so far under Eli Drinkwitz's tenure. Do I think they can get back to where they were a couple years ago and be in that 10-win range? Yes, I do think they could be there, but I won't quite have them as a dark horse. I don't think they quite have the talent level of Florida, Michigan, or Clemson. But in terms of coaching, I think they are very, very good. But I will have them in the same kind of realm as an Ole Miss. I think they are safely a bowl eligible team this year, but how high in that conference they can compete in 2026 is going to be the main question. So I will keep them there. And after them, we have NC State, who has been very up and down. Last year were a little bit better than I think they have been in the past few seasons. I will go probably not. They do play in the ACC, like I've said for a few of these teams. Could end up sneaking their way into that top 5, but I wouldn't say that necessarily is going to happen. I am going to keep them in probably not, and I'm going to say the same for Nebraska, who enters a bit of a rebuild in year 4 under Matt Rule. I think they level up their floor this year, both offensively and defensively, with some of the moves they made on both the staff and the roster on that side. But are they a CFP team this year? Definitely not. I don't see that happening. I think they could end up bowl eligible. I think they probably will end up bowl eligible, but I will probably cap it at there for the Cornhuskers. And after them, it's another tricky team in North Carolina. I think they should be safely in this range, but seeing that collapse last year does not make me confident in them overall. I'm going to say no chance, but with the talent level they have, I wouldn't be surprised if this pick right here ends up biting me in the butt in the future. And after them, we have Northwestern. And while I am relatively high on them, I am going to go no chance. I think they could be bowl eligible, but I'm probably going to cap them at 7 or 8 wins this year. Unlike the next team, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, I'm going to put them heavily in contendership. I think they are a team that is capable of winning a national championship with the talent they have, with the schedule they have especially, and now with the automatic bid that they get if they finish inside the top 12. I think they are safely a CFP team this year and very well could up winning the whole thing. And that is not dissimilar to an Ohio State, who I also will obviously have as a contender. They of course undergo that staffing change at offensive coordinator. They bring in Arthur Smith to replace Brian Hartline, but I still think with the talent level they have, it's top 4 in the sport. They are going to be at the top of the world once again. And after them, we have Oklahoma, who perhaps should be a dark horse because of the talent that they have. Obviously, they made the playoff last year. They retain a lot of the roster. They retain a lot of the staff. I do think I'm going to end up putting them in dark horse just because of that, but I do think they are slightly overrated coming into this year. I think they have a definite offensive ceiling, but defensively, they will of course be elite once again, most likely. So with that, I think I have to put them in dark horse. I think there is a route for Oklahoma to win the national championship, albeit a very, very small route in 2026. And then after them, their in-state rival, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. They of course bring in Eric Morris. They bring in Drew Mestamaker. I think that offense could be very, very good in year one, but I will go ahead and say probably not. Could they compete towards the top of the conference? Yes. Do I have that happening? Definitely not. I think they will probably end up in the 6 or 7 win range. Unlike a team in Oregon, who will probably once again be towards the top of the conference. Are they a national championship contender? I will say actually no. They do have a ton of talent, but with losing both coordinators, I am going to place them a tier below in the dark horse category. They are very, very talented. They could end up winning it, but I think a lot has to go right in order for that to happen. That obviously could happen though, so I don't want to say it is impossible, but I won't have them as a shoe-in like some of these other teams above them. And after them, it is Penn State now with Matt Campbell. I think they could end inside the top 25. I think they could end up with 8 or 9 wins. And I think if all goes well, they could end up competing towards the top of the conference. But like I said, for a few of these other teams, I am not sold on that happening. So for now, I will keep them in the not quite tier. And then following them, it is their rival Pitt. I'm going to go probably not, although I do think Pitt is a team, like so many other ACC teams, is capable of competing in that top third of the ACC. Unlike our next 2 teams, really, Purdue and Rutgers, who I'm going to speed run and put neither of them in a real CFP contendership role. I think there is no chance either of those teams make the CFP or even likely compete for a bowl game in 2026, so I'm giving them no chance. And then we have a team in SMU who 2 years ago won the ACC. I am going to go not quite for SMU, although I could see them once again competing at the top of the ACC, maybe reaching the college football playoff. For now, I have them at not quite. And I could see the same for South Carolina. They are very talented. They are an every other year team, and this is the other year where they would probably be good. Maybe in the CFP conversation if all goes well, but I'm going to safely put them in probably not. And looking at the recording time, I am already at half an hour of recording, so I'm going to speed run these last few. Stanford, there is just no chance. Syracuse, I could see them once again competing towards the top of the ACC. They obviously got very unlucky with injuries last year, but I would safely have them outside of CFP contendership this year. TCU, I will say not quite, just because I think they could be competing at the top of the Big 12, maybe for a Big 12 title if things go right. Tennessee is an interesting one because I think they could be a dark horse, but I'm not super high on them overall. I'll go not quite. Think they could end up finishing in the top 25, but probably not at the top of the SEC. Unlike a Texas, who I think should be a CFP contender, I could see them being on the same level as an Oregon, but I think bringing in Will Muschamp at DC with the talent level they have naturally year in and year out at Texas, I think they very well could end up winning the national championship this year, unlike a Texas A&M, who I will still have as a dark horse despite being a little bit lower on them this year. I think they still are at a very high talent level, especially on the offensive and defensive lines. Enough so to where I could see them getting to the CFP and could see them having a route to a national championship, but definitely would not bet on that in 2026. And I will say the same thing for a Texas Tech, who I think needs to take a step forward on offense to really be in that national championship conversation. I think they could take that step this year, but I will play it safe here and have them just at dark horse in 2026. Then we have UCF, who I will put no chance. UCLA, who I'm actually a little bit higher on, I'll put them in probably not. I really like the hire of Bob Chesney. I like a lot of the additions they bring in on offense, but definitely not going to be a Big Ten contender in year one, in my opinion. Southern Cal is always an interesting one. I feel like they should be a dark horse, but I can't really count on them, so I'm going to go not quite. Should end up once again inside the top 25, might be on the cusp, but like I said, just not super confident on them. Utah is another interesting one. They, of course, lose Kyle Whittingham. I will play it safe and go not quite. I think once again, they could end up in the top 25, but with that regime change, not super high on them in 2026. Just like a Vanderbilt who loses Diego Pavia, I will go probably not. Although they could once again end up being very good in the SEC, I will likely have them closer to 7 or 8 wins this year. And that is similar to a Virginia in the ACC that had a very good season, ended up playing in the ACC championship game last year, did not win. Don't think they're quite able to do that again this year, so I will go probably not for Virginia. Virginia Tech is an interesting one also because they bring in James Franklin, should be a lot better overall in 2026 than they have been in years past. I think they could actually end up competing towards the top of the ACC, so I'll go not quite, but pretty high on them going into next season, unlike Wake Forest, who admittedly did have a very good season in 2025 under Jake Dickert. Think they could end up having a pretty good season, but I will safely have them outside of the CFP conversation. Unlike a team in Washington who, if they can put it together, if they can block out the noise of course, the DeMond Williams situation, I think they could end up in this dark horse tier. I think they could potentially compete for a Big Ten title. I think they're very strong offensively, but I will put them in not quite, kind of in the same range as a USC. And that brings us to our final two teams, one in West Virginia, who I will go probably not, and then Wisconsin, who last year I would probably say there's no chance, but with some of the additions they've made, with Luke Fickell ending the 2025 season strong, I will bump them up for now. That is going to wrap it up. My top two tiers consist of contenders in Alabama, Georgia, Indiana, LSU, Miami, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and Texas. And then in the dark horse range, I have teams in Clemson, who now being grouped with some of these other teams, I might bump them down, and I probably will, despite them having a pretty solid roster, a pretty solid talent composite. And then I have Florida, who's going to be a shocker for some. I think they're just too talented and now too well coached for them to not be in this range. Michigan, Oklahoma, Oregon, Texas A&M, and Texas Tech. Those are the teams that I could see realistically making the CFP and competing for a national championship. But like I said at the beginning of the video, drop a comment down below. Let me know what you think going into this season. And as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did enjoy it. It helps me out a ton. And tune in next week for the start of the 2026 season previews. I will see you there.